So the idea for this application is, when you log in or when you wake up in the morning, you might want to see something positive for a change, because obviously these days it's mainly negative stuff. So I thought, what about a sort of homepage application? Single page that on a reload gives you a random positive message, maybe a random inspirational video, something to get you up in the morning and be a little bit more excited for life than reading through some pretty negative news. So I thought, okay, we'll do this. So I did a quick sketch in Figma just to show what I want it to kind of look like. And my idea is I'm going to implement it first as a prototype like I've done here. And then as I'm going, I'll figure out how I'm going to do each piece and I'll add that to the video. But essentially what I want is a sign that says good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. And then a quote that gets fetched from an API. So just a random positive quote. And then also a random video. I think that's going to be the most technically challenging because not only do we have to embed the YouTube video, we actually have to probably use the Google API to search for a random video based on a set of terms. So there's quite a few challenges in this project, but it's pretty doable, I think. Before I even get started, obviously Figma is what I've used to create this design. I really recommend it because it looks really nice and it gives you a sense of what you're actually building before you build it. Now, how you select, obviously I've done my design in a pretty rough fashion right here, but another thing to take note of when you're designing a website is how you're going to pick the color schemes and the theme. So I picked the name Lucitive. I didn't come up with that myself, actually. So I used to, when I was doing websites, I used to use this website called Colors. So it's just colors with an extra O. And it generates color palettes. So you can generate a color palette, which is useful. You can also search for a whole bunch. So basically there's just colors that work well together that you can build a website with. And that's cool, but an even better one I've found when you're coming up with ideas is this website called Namelix. So it's basically a business name generator, but what I did for mine was I wanted to make a website that was positive and brief. And when I generated it, you can select all the sorts of settings on how you want your name to be. And when you generate, you will get a whole bunch of ideas. And usually most of them that aren't taken are pretty shitty, but there are some that give you the idea. So obviously most of them are nonsensical from the setting that I put it on. Briefer, Gentian, weird names, but I actually found Lucitive. And then when you click on a name in here, it gives you a whole bunch of themes. These are color schemes that you could use and, font styles. It's super cool. And I much prefer this to having to just pick a color scheme than reinvent the icon and everything. Just what a great way to just get up and running is to have an idea given to you just like this. The next step is getting in and creating the React application. And I'll basically just be taking little stops after I create every little milestone in the build up to the creation of a working website. First step was to create the React app. And what I also did, just lumped into that step, was create the GitHub repository that I'll be using. And also, I'll need to link it to this one I'm hosting on Netlify, I believe. And I've opened it up in my code editor, which I'm using VS Code. So as you can see, I moved into the directory already as well. So next step is to get the app running and just clean the slate, because it gives you a lot of boilerplate and sort of beginning code that we don't need. Okay, so now we've got it to the point where the app is pretty much cleaned out. I've made a bunch of changes. I've removed all the styling. But this is now at least at a clean slate where I can begin the development. Okay, at this stage I've created all the scaffolding necessary so that when I go to develop stuff I'm not worrying about importing, exporting, etc. All the basic stuff has been created. The basic styling has been done. I've imported a few fonts. So just to quickly walk you through what I did, I imported two fonts. One's for the title and the other one is Roboto, just for the text. When I say scaffolding, I mean that this is just a div. This is just a a placeholder for where the real stuff will go. That's pretty much all there is to say at this stage. Just now that that's there, it makes the rest of it easy. And also, if you remember, this is what we're going for. So we've centered it correctly and it looks pretty close to what I was going for. It's been a little while since the last update. Of course, for the video it'll be almost instantaneous. What I've got now is a working page refresh where whenever I refresh the page, this will re-render based on the time zone. You get a new, that's naughty, you get a new quote and a new video. The most complicated part of what I've done in this step with the video was definitely Google's API, but they make it pretty easy with the API builder. So if you go here, go to search list, you can actually build an API call from here and then test that it works, and that's a lot easier because it generates a lot of code. There is one other challenge to it, is the Google or the YouTube, Google and YouTube API key that you need to use to be able to do this. You don't really want to publish that when it's in production, and so a challenge is how do you get this key without a backend. So anything that you put in these JavaScript files are going to be available on the front end. So the best I can do is not post my key to my GitHub repository, but I'm thinking, is that even worth doing? It's sort of project dependent how you're going to protect your variables. If it was Rails, for example, you've got your credentials file, and then when you go to like host it to Netlify or Heroku, you'll use an application specific way of hiding those credentials. But when you're on just React with just this little sort of create React app, there is really no way that I know of to shield variables. So just confirming from a bit of background research that there is really no way of storing safely variables in a React application. Just the front end part, that is. You would store it in your Node, Express, Rails, whatever backend, and what you would have is an API interaction where your front end requests the key from the backend, and then the backend, well, not request the key, sorry. Your front end requests the data from the backend, and the backend actually contains the key in encrypted format, and then so only the backend ever holds the key, and even then it's still encrypted. And then it returns the data to the front end through an API. So your backend typically should be the one consuming anything that would require an encrypted API key. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this app. The next step would be to publish this to Netlify or something. And I think they want to leave that for the future though. So, yeah. Okay, so concluding this project is actually kind of exciting because there are now, what began with, for me, a very simple project in my head, revealed a number of things that were kind of non-trivial. The first difficulty I encountered was consuming certain APIs. So certain APIs I was not able to consume with the React app, but that I could consume in my console. That's obviously going to be for another project to figure out, because otherwise there'd just be way too many things, or at least for another sort of time. And that'll go into maybe a separate video or article, just because if I'm struggling with that, most certainly there are more people who are also. The second thing that I struggled with, or I actually found a solution to, was how do you set state with asynchronous functions in React? Passing a callback is how I achieved it essentially, but I did it through, I needed a few workarounds. So maybe making a concise video on how that's done and giving an example in a future video would be pretty beneficial, I think. And then the last thing that I really, really struggled with was an API key, right? Once you've got an API key, especially for someone like me who's making a tutorial, right? I want to hide that API key from everybody when I'm posting it to GitHub. However, that's not something that I could do with just the React app. And through research, I found that there is actually no solution to work around that without a backend or a proper backend. Or if there is a solution, it's not going to work when, like, out of the box, when I post it to Roku or Netlify. It's not going to work if I do that method. So in the future, this will spawn probably a spin-off project, which would be creating a simple Rails API. Doing something like that would probably take less than an hour, even like while explaining it, and I think it'd be really useful. So those things to come, but it's kind of amazing how much I learned in quite a simple project, kind of the benefit of doing these projects as well. So that's it from me, and thanks for watching.